He's now going on black media, floating some pretty bizarre claims about his foreign policy record. So let me show you what he said while talking to my man Speedy on Complex. Let's hear what your president said.
But you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. And the Zionist is about whether or not Israel is a safe haven for Jews because of their history of how they've been persecuted.
Are you a Zionist?
Yes. Now you'll be able to make a lot out of it because people don't know what a Zionist is. Do you know what a Zionist is?
I just ask questions, I don't answer.
By the way, I'm the guy that did more for the Palestinian community than anybody. I'm the guy that opened up all the assets. I'm the guy that made sure that I got the Egyptians to open the border to let good goods through, medicine and food but what's happening is, and I'm the guy that's been able to pull together the Arab states to agree to help the Palestinians with food and shelter.
Have you, Joe? Is that what you've been doing? Fascinating conversation. I have to bring in somebody to help me make sense of this. Joining me right now is Mitchell Plitnick. He is an expert on all things foreign policy, particularly as it relates to Israel and Palestine. Of course, he is the co-author of a wonderful book, I would say, with all due humility and objectivity. It's called Except for Palestine, The Limits of Progressive Politics. We wrote that book together, of course. He is the LeBron to my Bronny. He is, I am the Cliff Levingston to his Michael Jordan. We wrote the book together, but Mitchell is the brains behind this operation, and he's here now to help me make sense of President Joseph Robinette Biden. He said, first of all, let's start with the light claim. He says, yes, I'm a Zionist. He's made a career, Mitchell, of saying, I am a Zionist, and there's nothing wrong with being a Zionist, and it only means that I want a safe haven for Jews. What do you make first of that claim?
Well, first of all, thanks for the kind introduction, but for all of that setup, I don't know that I can really help you make much sense of Joe Biden, but I'll do my best. When he says he's a Zionist, and a Zionist is just someone who believes in a safe haven for Jews, what he's telling us is he has no idea what a Zionist is. A Zionist is a Jewish nationalist. That isn't, nationalist these days certainly has a negative connotation, but that nationalism is very common. It's not only things like white nationalism, it is, very close to sort of patriotism. It is basically the belief that Jews make up a nation and should exist as a nation. This has been a point of debate within the Jewish community since Zionism came about, but that is what Zionism means. And
right. Now, when you say nationalism, that's an important point, right? Because not all nations have a nation state.
Right. That is absolutely true. It is part of what Zionists base their claim that they should get a state on is exactly that they're a nation, so they should have a state. But there are, the Kurds, the Roma, there are many, many people.
The Yazidis. There are only a couple hundred nations. There are thousands of nations. Only a couple hundred states.
Exactly. Yeah. And many states have multiple nations within them, including the one we're in right now. Indigenous peoples, most of them never had what you would call formally a state, and for the most part don't have that now, and that is problematic in its own sense. We deal with the question of colonialism. It's a question that we deal with Israel as well. But Biden is in this interview, when he asks Speedy if he knows what a Zionist is, not only is Biden showing his butt by revealing that he doesn't know what a Zionist is, he's again sort of trying to attack Speedy. He's trying to sort of be very aggressive here. And the reason is that he really doesn't have real answers to the questions that he's being asked. And then, I'm sure we'll go into more of the details of all of what this was.
Right. And that's what I want to talk about, because the other part of that interview, that soundbite that he gets to, is this idea of, I've done more for the Palestinians than anybody. And he gets into this weird rambly thing where I don't know exactly what he's saying. And to quote Donald Trump, sadly, I'm not sure he knows what the end of that sentence meant either. But it seemed as if he was making this claim again that he's done more for Palestinians than anybody. And I have to say, it frustrates me because he only does this in places where no one will question him on it. He knows that if you go on Complex, and this is not a disrespect to Speedy Morman, who is the interviewer, but he's not a foreign policy expert. He's not a foreign policy journalist. So he knows he can go there and say, I'm a Zionist and not get it challenged. He can wrongly define and not get it challenged. And he can misstate or misrepresent his record on Israel-Palestine. And it seems to me that when he says, I've done more for the Palestinians than anybody, and he goes on to say, I've made sure that food and goods and resources come in through Egypt. I've got the Arab states together, he said. When he says that, how do you respond to somebody who actually knows about this stuff?
I mean, I have to say, it's profoundly offensive that he would say something like that. This is a president who is actually, I think you can make a strong case that he has done more harm to the Palestinians than any other U.S. president, and that is a tough field to compete in.
That is hard.
It is very, very hard, and I think he makes a pretty strong case, including, by the way, his predecessor, Donald Trump. I am in no way defending Donald Trump, and many of the problems that Biden has had on Palestine arise from the fact that he has continued many of Trump's policies in this area. He did not reverse Trump's recognition of the Golan Heights. He pushed forward on Trump's whole Abraham Accords plan, trying to expand that to Saudi Arabia, which in many ways I think triggered the October 7th attack and the genocide that has subsequently gone on in Gaza. So, but even before that, before October 7th, before any of that had happened, Biden had completely neglected the Palestinians. He tried to bypass them in almost every way in terms of his policy towards Israel and his policy towards the Arab world. He would pay certain lip service to the Palestinians, but he did almost nothing, in fact, to help them. And as I've already pointed out, he has done more harm, I think, than almost any other president. He's talking now about, pushing Egypt to let food in. Egypt was never the problem. Israel was the one that was blocking the aid from coming in through the various crossings in Gaza, only one of which Egypt has any say over. So that's bad enough. When he talks about bringing the Arab states together, I'm not even sure what he's referring to there, because most of the aid that's come in has come from international agencies in the United Nations and other relief organizations. So I'm really not even sure what he's referring to on that. And I'm not sure he knows what he's referring to. He rambles and he loses the threads of his own conversation and his own points so frequently, it's hard to tell exactly what it is that he means.
He seems to say that because he's been such a strong advocate for the two-state solution for decades now, going on 50 years, he would argue that makes him a stalwart for justice, that he's never given up on the two-state solution. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's nonsense on almost every level. Let's just start with the fact that the two-state solution is not viable anymore. Just the expansion of settlements, the entrenchment of the far right in Israeli politics, certainly now after October 7th, the genocide in Gaza, the feelings just on both sides are very difficult. So, it's not possible anymore. And I think even more than that, when Biden says he has been a supporter of a two-state solution, all he's ever done to pursue a two-state solution or any solution is pay it lip service. When Israel grabs more land in the West Bank, when Israel builds more settlements, when they expand and crack down on Palestinian towns and villages and force people out of their homes, and I'm talking about the West Bank here, I'm not talking about Gaza. When Israel has done that, the United States has responded the same way they've responded to the genocide in Gaza, which is by doing nothing and continuing the flow of aid and weapons. That has been Biden's policy. It was Biden's policy, sadly, when he was a senator and when he was vice president as well. This is who Joe Biden is, and it is who he has always been. This is not a change in Biden since he took over the White House. So when Biden makes that statement, even basing it just in his own terms, whatever one thinks of the two-state solution, even if we take him on his own terms, he has been not just a failure. He hasn't actually tried. He simply talks about it.
Before I let you go, I just want to ask you one more thing, because I hear you say Biden could be potentially the worst president for Palestinians in recent history. And again, we could think through that. I'm not sure I agree. I'm not sure I disagree either. Like you said, it's such a they've all been
Tough
so
field.
remarkably
It's a
bad.
tough
It's hard to even know. So my question, I guess, is when someone hears that and they say, well, then should I just endorse Trump? Would Trump be better for the Palestinians? What do you,
I mean,
what do you say?
I actually just wrote a piece for Mondo Weiss addressing the Republican platform and the things that Trump has said about Palestine, as well as what we know so far of the Democratic platform. That hasn't been formed yet because the convention's still weeks away. And the case I make, I'm simply analyzing the two parties and what they're saying. But the case I make, without explicitly saying it, because Mondo Weiss is a 501c3 and you can't, you have to be careful about what you're writing. But the implicit case is that the Republicans will be worse. Trump will be worse. As I said, Trump was really the one who broke with a lot of longstanding traditions, and Biden has simply continued a lot of those policies, as well as adding some terrible decisions himself. But Trump, look, Trump's base, which he always tries to please, is evangelical Christians who are absolutely dedicated not just to Israel, but to the farthest right elements within Israel. That's who they are aligned with. Not even just Netanyahu. Even Netanyahu is also often criticized by these people for not going far enough. So these are people who like Itamar Ben-Gvir, Bezalel Smotrich. These are the real radicals, are the ones who they like. So, and that's who Trump is going to try to please. Trump. I think Trump was the worst. In my view, Trump was the worst in history. And then Biden came along and continued most of Trump's policies and brought in some new ones and made some bigger problems. And of course, presided over a genocide that has actually been worse than the Nakba in terms of the devastation and the loss of life and the disruption of people's lives and displacement. It's been bigger. And I think Trump will continue that trend and be even worse than Biden. So that's not an answer. Unfortunately, the conclusion I came to in this article is you pick your poison. Neither one of them is any good on Palestine. Both of them are terrible. To say that Biden might be better, I mean, considering that he's engineering a genocide, that says a lot about Trump, even if you're right. But it certainly isn't a reason that by itself isn't a reason to vote for Biden. Or to support Biden, or to think that Biden is somehow going to solve any problems in Palestine or make anything better. He will not. It just could be that Trump will make it even worse.
I think that's the right analysis. I mean, last night, or not even last night. I mean, last night was awful in terms of sort of watching the White House kind of strut around as if they sort of nailed that interview because they thought they told some profound truth, or at least convinced us of some profound lie about what's going on there. But when you look at his actual recent record, it's even more stressful.
Yeah.
It kind of got buried because Donald Trump was almost killed
right
on Saturday. But the day before, last Friday, Joe Biden, he got real about the $26 billion that he's greenlit for Israel. And that's just for war. That's not the regular budget. That's just a war budget. He stressed the importance of Israel as a haven for Jews. In that interview that we just saw, not only does he assert his own Zionism, but he calls Hamas a pack of thugs, which, whatever you think of Hamas, that's not the language of reconciliation. That's not the language of problem solving. That's not the language of diplomatic solutions.
And it's certainly not the language of pushing for a ceasefire.
Absolutely. And this idea that he's bringing the Arab nations together, to your point, I don't know exactly what he means. I think he means Jordan and Saudi, and maybe Qatar. But, at the end of the day, Joe Biden is, talking about resolution and two-state solutions and peace and respect and coexistence. But at the end of the day, he, as he says, is a Zionist, and he means that however he publicly defines it, his actions seem to reinforce the definition of Zionism that we all understand, which is a very particular political movement, a very particular form of nationalism that continues to lead to the dispossession of Palestinian people.
Yeah. And just I just want to make one last point before we end this, Mark. And that is that in what Biden said, there were two other, I think, profoundly offensive things. One was that he repeated this lie about a mother and a daughter being tied together, kerosene poured over them, and being burned. This never happened. This has been completely debunked, and even Israel admits it never happened. But Biden is repeating it, and that is absolutely genocidal language.
Did he see pictures of those too? You know, remember a couple months ago when he insisted that he saw the photos of something that actually never existed, something that he never saw.
Yeah, I mean, this is, and that at least his people walk back. This they're just leaving out there.
Right.
And the one last thing is when Biden says that Israel it has to be a safe haven for Jews, that without Israel, or as he's frequently said, without Israel, no Jew in the world is safe. He's supposed to be my president.
Right.
He's supposed. I'm Jewish, and he's supposed to make sure I'm safe in his country. That's
Right.
his job. Number one. Number two, Israel does not make me more safe. Does not make any Jew anywhere safer. In fact, the most dangerous place to live as a Jew is Israel. And has been, by the way, long before October 7th, long before the intifadas, both intifadas, it has been from the beginning. It has been the most dangerous place for Jews, and it has not been anything that in any way combats or diminishes anti-Semitism in other places. I would argue it actually increases them, but I think the strong case is that we can certainly say it does not diminish it anywhere. And for the president of the United States to repeatedly make that statement, he's telling me I'm not safe in the country he's running. So that's on him. And it is something that I don't accept as an American Jew.
That'll be the last word on that, and a powerful word. That is Mitchell Plitnick. Thank you always for hanging out with me. Go Sixers.
Go Nets if they can sometime ever. In a few years, it'll be.
Yeah, I'm about to say.
Right,
their success will come right after the Tuesday solution. I'll see you later.